Welcome to today's reading from the Basics of Bhagavad-Gita, based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C.Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mukam karoti vachalam angum langayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Dina Taranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Vanchakalpadurubhescha Kripa Sindhubhe Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. So we were reading yesterday about soul, and just to give you a quick recap, we were talking about the qualities of the soul. That soul is eternal, it is imperishable, it is eternally an individual, and the size of the soul. Also that the soul is amazing. A tiny soul empowers the body of a germ as well as the huge body of an elephant. And we talked about the near-death and out-of-the-body experiences, and how people who are lying on the operating table, who are supposed to be clinically unconscious at that time because of the anesthesia and all that, but still when they come around on waking up, they talk about them being able to hear the whole operation going on in their body and describe it step by step, even though they are not medical persons. And these studies have been conducted in USA by many doctors and researchers. We discussed Dr. Stevenson and how he was amazed, even though saying in the beginning of his research that body is just made of chemicals. But then he himself said that somewhere along the line, the life comes, which is like a big question mark to the ones who don't believe in the soul and the reincarnation of the bodies and everything else. So let's continue from there on. The comparison between spirit, soul and matter. Now, spirit, soul or the Atma, matter is the material body. The spirit, soul or Atma is Sat or eternal, and the matter, which is our material body, is Asat. Asat because the forms are always changing. The Atma is Chit, that is conscious, having knowledge, whereas the material body is Achit. It is not conscious and it is full of ignorance. The Atma is full of Anand or bliss, and whereas the material body is Niranand, without bliss, prone to suffering. Atma has got a form. Now the material body has to be given a form. Atma has individuality and the material body hasn't got no individuality. Atma belongs to the spiritual world, and the material world belongs the material body. The two energies of God. In the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 7, verses 4 and 5, Lord Krishna speaks about his two energies in this world. Bhumir apo analo vayu ham mano buddhir evacha ahankar idiyam me bhinna prakritir ashtadha. This is verse 4 from chapter 7, translated as earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Aparayam itistva anyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. Again, this chapter 7's 5th verse, it's translated as, besides these, O mighty army, armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So the spiritual nature is the higher nature and the material nature is classed as the inferior nature of Krishna. So material energy is superior nature or the higher nature, higher energy, and material energy is of the inferior nature. The material energy is called inferior energy, and the spiritual energy comprising of the souls is called the superior energy. So our body is comprised of both these energies. Our body is inferior and our soul residing within our body, in our heart with the Paramatma or the super soul, is superior energy. The chart is given here which outlines the information in the 2 verses. I'll try to describe the chart to you. The God's energies in the world. There are of 2 types, inferior and superior, like we're just talking. Material energy is the inferior one and the spiritual is the superior one. And further, the inferior material energy is subdivided into 2, the gross elements and the subtle elements. The gross elements are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And the subtle elements are mind, intelligence, and ego. The superior spiritual energy is further divided into spirit soul. From the spiritual energy, the spirit soul comes. Now, the 2 bodies. We have seen that the material energy has 5 gross elements and 3 subtle elements. Therefore, the material body also can be said to be composed of 2 bodies, the gross body and the subtle body. The gross body is, in ordinary terms, our physical body comprising of earth, which is a solid element, water, which is liquid element, fire, which is heat element, air, which is the gas element, and ether, which is the space element. Earth is the grossest element and ether is the most subtle. The subtle body comprises mind. When we say gross and subtle, gross means which we can perceive, which we can see. Ether is the most subtle. It is not totally comprehensible to our minds and we can't understand it properly because we can't perceive it properly. We can't see it or hear it or smell it or taste it and so on. The subtle body comprises mind, intelligence, and false ego. These 3 elements cannot be directly perceived by any of our senses, although they can be experienced. I repeat, the subtle body, which comprises of mind, intelligence, and false ego, these 3 elements cannot be directly perceived by any of our senses, although they can be experienced. Now, the mind is the storehouse of desires and memories. Intelligence is the faculty of discrimination. And false ego, the subtlest of all, brings the eternal soul under illusion and makes it identify itself with the temporary material body. The soul, of course, being non-material, is superior to all the above 8 elements. It is beyond the 2 bodies and is the proprietor of both. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, Indriyani parani ahur indriyebhyah param manaha manasastu para buddhir yo paratas tu. Verse 42, translated as, the working senses are superior to the dull senses, Dull matter, sorry, not the dull senses. And mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and the soul is even higher than the intelligence. Now you must have seen the famous chariot, where Krishna is the charioteer and Arjuna is traveling on the chariot and has got 4 horses on the chariot. Now we'll be using that analogy to the chariot of our body. Okay, so our body is a chariot, is a rath. Horses are the senses. जो हॉर्स हमारा शरीर रथ हो गया, और जो हमारे इंद्रियां हैं वो हमारे घोड़े हो गए, अश्व हो गए, और माइंड मन हो गया, रेन्स को क्या बोलते हैं हिंदी में? I think Shamita is not here today, so who is going to help me? जिसे reins, जिसे लगाम, yes, I think the lagam is the right word, lagam, which we just control the horses with, the rope. And intelligence is driver, buddhi hamari driver hai, और soul passenger. Soul is the atma hamari yatri hai. The Vedic literatures explain that the body-soul combination may be compared to the chariot, to be a chariot. Here is the comparison. When the intelligence is pure, spiritual and strong, then it can control the mind, which in turn can control the senses just as a good driver. So when the intelligence is pure and spiritual, it can control the mind, which in turn can control the senses just as a good driver controls the reins and thus the horses as well. The overall purpose of the soul-body arrangement can be fulfilled only if the senses are controlled. अगर हमारी इंद्रियां वश में हैं तो हम बॉडी और आत्मा, अपने शरीर और आत्मा का जो कॉम्बिनेशन है, जो उनको भगवान ने दिया है, उसको ठीक से कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं. काबू में कर सकते हैं, वश में कर सकते हैं. When the intelligence is contaminated and weak, the mind and senses, which are full of material desires for enjoyment, carry away the chariot of the body in a very dangerous and uncontrolled way. Therefore, the intelligence must be nourished and made resolute through spiritual knowledge. So, बहुत important है कि हम अपनी बुद्धि का पोषण करें अच्छी आध्यात्मिक नॉलेज से, आध्यात्मिक स्पिरिचुअल नॉलेज से, जिससे कि हमारी बुद्धि कमज़ोर और दूषित न हो, क्योंकि माइंड और सेंसेस, मन और इंद्रियां, जिनमें बहुत सारे दुनिया के डिज़ायर्स, मटेरियल डिज़ायर्स भरे हैं. हमारी आंखें बहुत कुछ देखना चाहती हैं, कान बहुत कुछ सुनना चाहते हैं, नाक बहुत कुछ सूंघना चाहती है, स्मेल करना चाहती है, और जीवा बहुत कुछ खाना चाहती है, बहुत कुछ बोलना चाहती है. तो यदि ये कंट्रोल में नहीं होगा तो हमारे जो बॉडी का रथ है, शरीर का रथ, शरीर रूपी रथ, वो बहुत ही एक खतरनाक और अनियंत्रित वे में, अनियंत्रित तरीके से जीवन में चलेगा. The cage polishing civilization. Unfortunately, instead of pursuing spiritual knowledge, people run after the pleasures of this world. It is very surprising that most of our life revolves around matter and we forget the spirit soul, which is eternal. It is equally amazing that people accept the body to be permanent. We all have sufficient experience that the happiness of the body is temporary and flickering. Still, we are attached to it as if it is permanent. Like I remember reading in Hindi once, many years ago, कि क्षणभंगुर और अशाश्वत चीज के पीछे हम भागते हैं, जैसे कि वो शाश्वत हो या परमानेंट हो. Okay. So it is explained that the body is like a cage and the soul is like a bird within it. तो शरीर हमारा एक पिंजरा है और आत्मा एक उसके अंदर बैठे पक्षी की तरह है. If one simply polishes the cage but neglects to feed the bird, what will be the result? We all know that. We just keep polishing the body, outer body, the cover we have got, and neglect the bird inside, which is the Atma. So what will happen? There was once a lady who had a pet parrot who was kept in a golden cage. She cleaned and polished the cage every day, but neglected the parrot completely. Soon, being deprived of food and water, the parrot died. Similarly, our modern society is simply a cage polishing civilization, which caters to the unlimited demands of the body, but completely ignores the needs of the soul. How can then there be peace and happiness in society? The soul is eternally part and parcel of God. The soul is an eternal fragmental portion of God's spiritual knowledge, spiritual energy, and is thus eternally linked to God in a bond of service and devotion. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 15, verse 7, Mame Vamsho Jivaloke Jivabhuta Sanatana Manah Shasthani Indriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati. That the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal or fragmental parts. Due to the conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So, Lord has said this very clearly. The soul is the part and God is the whole. That is, the soul can never become a God. That's why again and again this expression is used, that we are part and parcel of God. We are not God, but we are gods. हम भगवान नहीं हैं, पर हम भगवान के हैं. That is, we are God's property, and therefore we should be only engaged in His service. Aham Brahmasmi means I am spirit, not matter. The soul is Brahman, spirit, but God is Parabrahman, which is Supreme Spirit. Hence, Aham Brahmasmi should never be taken to mean that I am God. So this is the difference between the devotees and the ones who interpret the wrong meaning of Aham Brahmasmi, that I am the God. Actually, it means I am spirit, that is Brahman, but God is Para Brahman, but God is the Supreme Spirit. Those who propagate the phrase Soham, which means I am He, you must have heard this phrase, which means I am He, believe that God is impersonal and that we are that same whole. They think that God is only the light which comes off His body, and they think that they are same as the whole God, the person behind the light. But it is not true. We are like God in quality, that is, we are both spiritual, but we are not the same in quantity. This is called principle of Achintya Bhed Abheda. We are same in quality, but not in quantity. Inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference. God is infinite and we are tiny, infinitesimal. So, few differences between God and spirit soul are: God is the supreme soul, spirit soul is the individual soul. God is finite or vibhu, spirit soul is infinitesimal or anu. God is supremely conscious, spirit soul is individually conscious. God is the eternally master and the spirit soul is eternally servant. The soul belongs to the kingdom of God, the spiritual world, but it is now lost here in the material world. By reviving its original relationship with God, it can turn home back to Godhead. What happens to the soul after death? Since the body is perishable and the soul is eternal, the question naturally arises, where does the soul go after death? Lord Krishna answers that the soul occupies another material body after leaving the previous one. This is reincarnation or transmigration. The soul accepts one body after another. In this way, the cycle of birth and death goes on. So what is the logic behind the idea of reincarnation? Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad-Gita that the reincarnation or change of body takes place even in this life. From childhood to youth to old age, the soul moves through various bodies in one life. Similarly, at death, the soul moves to another body. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantar praptir dhiras tatrina muhyati. This is from Chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita, verse 13, translated as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Lord Krishna explains that the material body is like a dress for the soul, just as we change our clothes periodically and wear new ones. Similarly, the soul discards the old body when it is no longer useful and accepts a new one. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grihnati naro parani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. From chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita, verse 22, translated as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. The body is also like a car or apartment, and the soul is like a driver or resident. Just as we give up an old car to buy a new one, similarly the soul leaves the old body and accepts a new one. Why is one child born in a wealthy family and another in a poor family? Why someone is mentally retarded and someone is gifted with natural intelligence? Why is there such disparity from birth? This can be explained only if we understand that there is a previous life and that the present birth has taken place in accordance with the activities or the karma of the previous life. We will discuss more about this in the next section, which is, I'm just calling it chapter 4. It will be the wheel of samsara and the law of karma. I will try to join you tomorrow with this next topic, the wheel of samsara and the karma. If I don't, then obviously we'll meet on Monday. So we have talked about soul now on length, and it's been very clearly described. It's worth hearing and contemplating on, and like you must be here, if any of you who have heard the morning Bhagavatam class, that we have our dharma in this life. We have got different ashrams, like they say in scriptures. We have got the brahmacharya ashram, the grihastha ashram, then the vanaprastha ashram, then we have stages of life. We are little, then we go to learn into our schools or gurukuls, then we grow up, we have our higher education in the universities, or some kind of work experiences, those of some who don't like to go to the higher education, and then we have some working life, we get married, we have a grihastha ashram, we look after the families, we earn money and we work day and night. And then comes a time when we have actually finished all our grihastha duties. Shastras call it vanaprastha ashram. Doesn't mean that one has to leave home and go and be situated in an ashram. One can be situated wherever they are, but get more deeper into the studies of the Shastras and try to understand the real purpose of this life. Because once this old body will be given up. When the soul decides that it is not suitable for it anymore, it will give up that body and it will move on to another one. So for our future journeys, and if we are keen not to come back to this world for more tests of birth, growth, old age and death, then we have to get out of it. Otherwise we'll be born in various different species of life. Could be cat, could be dog, could be aquatics, could be birds, could be reptiles, could be so many species. There are insects, anything, or could be back into a person's life. And like we were hearing in the class this morning on Bhagavatam from Narayan Keshav Prabhu, that who knows, in our next life we'll be able to execute this Krishna consciousness properly. If we are born as a very big celebrity or a personality, we might have so much opulence and so much temptation around us, it might be very hard for us to even think of Lord and do our Bhagavad Dharma, which is the devotional service. And then we'll get stuck in the rut of coming here and going back and all that stuff. So, end of the day, the choice belongs to us. This is the free will given by the Lord to us. However we want to do, He will provide the opportunities and the situation and the circumstances conducive to our desire. So, well, I have made up my mind. I don't want to come back to this. Yeah, learn and then unlearn. Learn when you take birth, then you grow up, then you learn so many things, then you unlearn them as you die, then you again come back. It's not worth it. Because end of the day, we are part and parcels of God. God is Vibhuv, our Atmas are Anu, and we want to get fit into the jigsaw again and go and serve Him there in spiritual life with Lord around up there in Golok Vrindavan. We don't have material bodies. There's no birth, death, old age, misery, nothing. There's nothing to do with the activities of body. You can eat with your eyes. You can do various, all the activities are done in a different way on a spiritual level. So let us get out of here. I'm just sharing with you what I have learned from the Shastras, and think for yourself what is best for you. Because like I was saying once to you, that I was told by one of the devotees that there's 3 lives. In 3 lives you perfect the Krishna consciousness, and we don't know which one is this. This could be the first one, the second one, or the last one. And let's do our best endeavor so that, like Krishna says, that if we take 1 step, He will take 10 steps for us. So He will help us, and just pray to Lord that give us the good desires which are favorable of the bhakti, and look after your health. Looking after health is the main prerogative. If your health is fine, everything else is doable. If it's not, everything becomes difficult. So with these words, I'll take your leave. Please forgive me if I've said something wrong to hurt someone, or my thought process wasn't clear somewhere. It is all my interpretation. Shastras are completely right. Prabhupada has given the right knowledge there. So if there's a mistake, it's me. And with these words, I'll take your leave. Hare Krishna, and have a wonderful day ahead. Hari Bol.